I suppose it's about time we go ahead and get started. My name is Nikki Shemanski. I will not be going first today. We kind of discussed this, and I know some of you are like the staff here for an hour, and I would really like for you to at least to hear him speak, because you guys get to hear me talk about this all the time. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all very much for coming. So with that, I want to introduce you to the Executive Director and the co-founder of the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, Dr. Julian Fennessy.
Thanks, Nikki. Lovely. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. And I hope you can all understand me. I have an accent, but I really don't believe so. I reckon you all have accents. I'm an Australian by trade. But I've lived in Africa for the last 15 years, predominantly in Namibia in southern Africa, but have worked quite extensively across a lot of Africa, chasing giraffe and other animals, which has been quite cool. So I'm going to give you an overview today briefly before Nikki comes on after me to describe Namibia in detail and her trip. But I'm going to give you an overview of Giraffe 101. All of the things that you wanted to know about giraffe and were scared to ask. But I think the most important thing I want you guys to take away today is that giraffe are endangered. They're really threatened. Their numbers are plummeting. And many of you may know this, but we'll go through today, see a couple of numbers that I think will be quite shocking to many of you. But as a bit of a background, Giraffe Conservation Foundation, we were founded in 2009. So this was after many years of working giraffe conservation voluntary. And up until 2 weeks ago, the whole organisation and what we did was undertaken voluntary. So that's an important thing to know. There was a lot of people behind it, a lot of master's students, PhD students, but everything was done in our spare time. And we're involved in a host of things, whether it's raising money, whether it's providing technical support, or getting on the ground and just having fun. But importantly, we're a network organisation. GCF, or the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, we bring people together. We bring people together across the whole continent. All of these little giraffe identify individuals who have or are currently working on giraffe-related conservation issues. So whether it be in West Africa, throughout East Africa and Southern Africa, all of these actually are PhD or master's students. And the collective of them, I don't know what you want a collective of scientists would be, but frightening, I think. You know, just get them in a room and that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Not. But I think the most important thing about these guys is the combined number of them is equal to the previous numbers of PhDs or studies done on giraffe ever before. So we're at a new wave of giraffe conservation support. And I think, you know, we couldn't fit sort of America, Europe or whatnot on the board, but these people here are people like Nikki. It's people out there who are experts in their own field. We're not experts in the managed world, the captive, the zoo world. So we come to people like Nikki and we work closely with collaborations and Blank Park Zoo. And most interesting, Blank Park Zoo still to this day is the biggest supporter of giraffe conservation in the world. And I reckon I can throw a stone across this zoo. You know how small it is. You know, what about the Disneys out there? What about the Sea Worlds? What about the, you know, the rest of them? I think it's something that you guys should be very proud of. The conservation team should be very proud of it, and it's something we're proud to be associated with. But we're a family, there's no doubt. We, you know, as I said, a lot of it's done voluntary. You know, we take our little tykes with us. This is our kids, Molly and Luca, who come with us to many places around Africa to do this work in our spare time. But we have the chair of our board here, Andy. He's a lieutenant commander in the British Navy. So, and he's built like a brick house. He's the kind of guy that you really want to take out there when you have to tackle giraffe. Young researcher who works with us, and again, this is a zoo character. This is Peter Fraser. He's Auckland Zoo in New Zealand. And Peter, like the team here, he's one of those guys who just love giraffe. And he's come and they've supported us over the last couple of years and continue. And I think getting guys out in the field to become and experience things and come back to the zoo really become ambassadors for giraffe in general. We support guys in Zambia doing research, in Kenya, and most recently in Uganda. This is another lady who works for Cleveland Metropark Zoo, a donor, Leiden Conservation Fund. This is Kathy Leiden. And this is a young PhD student, Michael Brown, who is starting his studies through Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. So again, together, it's bringing people experiences. And one of those experiences, I think we've been really fortunate, is Giraffe Indaba. And Indaba is a Zulu word for meeting. So bringing people together. We hosted 2 meetings. The top one is in 2011 in Namibia, and the bottom one was last year in Kenya. So this brought together giraffe experts from across Africa internationally, who were involved in research or involved in the zoo world, to come together and talk about giraffe conservation. It had never happened before. So it's a simple thing to do, but it's a really powerful tool we found to be able to engage people. And when we talk about engaging people, this World Giraffe Day, many of you were involved with, and can't thank World Blank Park Zoo enough for what you guys did. I mean, this turned out to be an amazing event internationally. It was the largest media awareness and fundraising event for giraffe conservation ever, hands down. And this was the first year, I think, and it's only going to get bigger. Everyone keeps knocking on the door saying, what can we do next year? How are we going to do it? And I think it's brilliant, to be in it from the ground up. And, I rightly put Blank Park Zoo in there because this is just something small that the keepers really, I think, around the world found an opportunity to engage giraffe. We've got elephant keepers out there. Some of you may be in the room. We've got lion keepers and whatnot. But giraffe keepers never sort of had something to hold on to. And this was not meant to, but it really, sort of brought people together. So we're very excited about World Giraffe Day. And hopefully it just gets bigger and bigger. Giraffe Spotter, I'm not going to talk much about it, but go online. Google giraffespotter.org. I've got a bunch of little stickers we can hand out to you today so you can remember that. But this is a tool that we've created with a local university in Namibia that if you're on safari, you can take a photo, even if you're traveling on a safari to a zoo, take a photo of that giraffe, stick it online, and there's a map. You can put the pin on the map where that giraffe is, and we can start to get a picture of where giraffe across Africa and the world are. As I said, GCF's a network organisation. We can't do it ourselves. We've been voluntary. So we're engaging the world to hopefully help us better understand giraffe, what they look like, and where they live. So this is really cool. This is hot off the press, and we've been working with some zoos to help bring it even more closely home to the zoo world. Stay tuned on that. So I said we're a network organisation. We're also a support organisation. We support a bunch of projects, and as you see, it's very similar places where there's PhD and master students. You can't really support people if they're not something happening on the ground. So we've been lucky enough to, this is in Gambela National Park in Ethiopia. It's on the border with South Sudan. And we supported the Addis Ababa University to go out and do a survey of what's going on. And they found 150 of the last 650 Nubian giraffe in the world. We didn't know that any existed there anymore. So this is quite an exciting thing to be able to be engaged with. In West Africa, giraffe live in and amongst people only. There is no elephants, there is no squirrels, there's no other animals left in this landscape. Just giraffe, people and their livestock. This is about 60 kilometres, and I have no clue, 35 miles from the city, Niamey, in Niger, which is regularly up there as the #1, poorest country in the world. Giraffe are protected there. There's down to 400 individuals remaining in all of West Africa in the wild. It's not really that many. So we helped them develop the first ever giraffe conservation strategy for the country. We've also done some really cool, funky things. This is a whole bunch of giraffe that we shipped across on an island to back into a new area, or a former area, should I say, new former area, in northern Kenya called Lake Baringo. It's the first ever translocation of Rothschild's giraffe back into their natural range in Kenya. So this is something that we had to get involved with. We didn't move them ourselves, but we were involved in doing the pre and post monitoring to make sure it was all done smoothly. And from 8 giraffe that were moved there, I believe there's 12 today. So that's quite great. 2 years on, obviously some were quite pregnant when they moved them. So we're a network, we've done a lot of support, but we do stuff ourselves. We get on the ground, and this is an example of where we're going to be doing some work in the next 6 months. We're going to be doing a lot of genetic sampling, so I'll talk a little bit about that and why genetics is important, and Nikki will show what we did running around Namibia a little bit. But we're also going into places like here. This is the DRC, the Congo. Anyone who knows Coney? I've seen the videos of Lord's Resistance Army who really have just decimated wildlife across this region. And a lot of it's for the ivory trade. And while that's sort of helped fuel criminal, syndicates around the world, they've been eating giraffe. So we're down, we think, to the last 30 individuals remaining in the DRC. So we've been invited up by the government to see what we can do. So going back to the 101, we've got one type of giraffe species, one species of giraffe, and 9 subspecies, or different flavors, varieties, whatever you want to call it. They're all got interesting patterns. This is just an example of what they look like, but within a population it can be really diverse as well. But it's important to know, as I move forward, that currently there's 1 species and 9 subspecies. And that's because you go out and you do genetic sampling, and normally I would show some stuff, but Nikki's got some cool pictures that we're going to put up later, she is. We collect the DNA sample, which is just tissue sample, and we analyze it to figure out who's who in this big African zoo of giraffe. So if we can figure out who's who, it can help us do conservation management better. How can we save these things? That's the most important thing. But if we don't know what type of giraffe are they different? Are they the same? It doesn't help. So this is from a paper that literally is submitted yesterday to, sort of some scientific journal out there, and I don't even know the name, it's like this long, the name, but it doesn't really matter. This shows, and it looks quite technical, but it's really simple. This shows here that it's got 2.02. This shows 2 million years ago, approximately, giraffe started to become different. And that's really important because that's a long time in conservation to figure out that animals are different. We've got different types of giraffe from South Africa, up in Kenya, down to Namibia, DRC, all over the show. All of these show that they're very, very different. And that's really crap to be able to explain anything. So I decided that makes something really easy for people. Years ago, giraffe split, north and south. Much easier. But it's brilliant, the other one. It sort of confuses the hell out of me, so hopefully not you guys. Then it's split into different groups, and we colour them. It's a hell of a lot easier. So this just shows there is 9 different types of giraffe. That's what we always knew. But 2 million years ago, you put it in perspective, bears. So there's polar bear, brown bear, black bear, bucket loads of bears everywhere. And they're all different flavours, they're all different species of giraffe. But they only split about 800,000 years ago. It's not that long ago. Giraffe, remember, 2 million years ago. But they're all different species. And then you've got chimpanzees, which everyone knows about, so closely related to humans, 450,000 years ago. So, think about that. If giraffe, is there really 1 species, or are there many species? So we're currently doing the genetics work on that. So you look at the female and the male DNA parts of the DNA to be able to tell who's who. One of the exciting things we've already found out is that the Rothschild's giraffe, which is in Zambia, is identical to the Maasai giraffe. So basically we're already thrown out of the box 1 subspecies. We've also just seen, using the nuclear DNA, the male DNA, that the South African and the Angolan giraffe, which is very different, is actually the same. So we're finding all this information out. So in the next year, we will have finished all of this work and be able to really figure out who's who. And that will help us with conservation management. But with conservation management, you also need to know how many are there? Where are they? What are the threats? So we've developed these things called country profiles, and we've developed 20 countries so far. We've figured out who's, where, how many, what are the issues. They're developed into what we call country profiles, as I said, and these are freely available online, and it talks about, most importantly, where are they? In Rwanda, they are here. But there was never giraffe previously in Rwanda. We know that they've been introduced from Kenya. So it's things like that. This has never been reported previously for giraffe conservation. And this is going to be the backbone of figuring out, are giraffe endangered, really, or not? We all know elephant are endangered, rhino endangered, but we haven't done this sort of detailed work on giraffe because we've been too busy sort of doing the bills for keeping the kids to go to school. So this is really amazing stuff, I find, as the basis to figure out what's happening. One of those things is this range in the red. This shows where giraffe were thought to be by WWF. This was their map just 2 years ago. This is the map of where giraffe currently is in Africa. So most recently, finally, WWF have started to change their map. And if we can't change WWF, you know, the worldwide foundation, you know, these guys are what we know as one of the most amazing organizations in the world, and we work closely with them. But if we can't change them to figure out what's happening in giraffe, how can we convince everybody out there? So these are the numbers, the 101s. There's less than 80,000 giraffe in the wild. So if there is, what, 6 species maybe, 7 species, we don't know. One of them, the Maasai giraffe, 50% of it, all of their numbers are Maasai giraffe. We've got some with less than 400 individuals, some with 650. So if you put it on a map, on a graph here, this big blocks, elephant, there's anywhere between 400 and 550,000 elephants out in the wild. But the amount of money, support, and energy that goes into elephant conservation far outstrips that goes into giraffe conservation. But yet their numbers are so much more. Even gorillas down here, which we know are very endangered, we've got 2 types of giraffe that are even more endangered. So if they become species of giraffe, they become some of the most endangered large mammals in the world. It's a little frightening, really. But I think what's positive is now we've started to finalize this work, each one of them comes out as a critical need to save. So they're all endangered of a status, critically endangered, vulnerable. This will help governments really understand what's happening with their animals and hopefully help them understand that there is a need and a desire to do conservation management. But most importantly, it's not all doom and gloom. Here, when we look at historical numbers, numbers dropped from 140,000 down to less than 80,000 in just 15 years. That's greater than 40% drop in the last 15 years. It's not very long. But the numbers here, which are the 2 that we've had listed as endangered in the last couple of years, whether it's as a result of the work of getting them listed as endangered, numbers actually have risen. So that's positive. Imagine if we can get all the others listed, let's hope it also can reverse that trend. But the key to that is getting information out there. It's getting education, getting awareness out at all levels. We developed a booklet, which is again freely available online. It talks about the 101s of giraffe. It talks about, you know, the fun facts, how many, where they are. All of the information I've presented is available in this booklet. So I recommend go online, download it. It's in a nice little PDF form, and you can learn a hell of a lot more about giraffe. Get onto social media. We're all on Twitter and Facebook and all of these types of things. I mean, these are amazing tools now that's brought internationally all of us together, quick, instantaneous. And it's something that I have learnt so much. And if we can share that information with people, you know, that's what it's all about. So I'm just going to describe quickly one program in detail, or detail-ish, about what we do. So on the ground in Uganda, we have a program that deals with an integrated approach: conservation, research, and education. I'm going to visit Uganda. So it's in East Africa. This is Kenya next to it, the Congo, DRC up here, and these 2 spots here are the only 2 remaining giraffe population in all of the Uganda. So this is the Rothschild's giraffe that have listed as endangered. And one of the reasons why they might be endangered is they have a thing called giraffe skin disease. It's quite horrendous if you have a look on this giraffe. We really don't know much about it. We've just started going into Uganda to provide some support, and we're seeing that is impacting some of the population. What is it? We don't really know. We think this is actually a papillomavirus. Many of us know papillomavirus. It's quite common. So what we did first for the government with their support, we did an assessment. This is in Murchison Falls National Park. This is home to 75% of the world's Rothschild's giraffe in the wild. So we need to conserve this population. It's critical that we conserve them. So we did a survey along all these black lines to figure out where the giraffe are and how many. So we did an assessment and we got just over 400 individual giraffe that we photographed out there. And the little red spot shows how many have skin disease, whether it's a small amount or a large amount. So you can see it's quite a lot, and in where most of them live. So it's really important. Everyone says, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, we've got to figure out what it is first before we can do something about it. So since this program has just kicked off, we've been working with the Uganda Wildlife Authority to help collect skin samples. They'll go off to get tested now, and hopefully we'll find out if we can do something or not. But importantly for us, we can monitor this, we can survey them. We know every individual now who's got skin disease or not, and we can monitor that over time to see if it's really having an impact. Snares, so wire, pieces of wire that people are poaching animals. It's not really they're poaching for giraffe, but it's unfortunately they're a byproduct of it. This is as a result of a snare that went underneath the armpit here. And then you've got cheeky little devils like this oxpecker who just like to keep it open because it oozes a little blood, and that's what they love to eat and sip on. So unfortunately it's not great, but these giraffe that are poached or attempted to be poached, many of them are saved, and that's brilliant. And that's with the support of the Uganda Wildlife Authority, and the game guards are on the ground. And most recently, we provided binoculars, GPS cameras, and some funding to help them spend time on the ground. This is something that, they're not really resource rich. So if we can provide this support, this is with the support of Cleveland's Zoological Society, it's something small that we can do to help them and help giraffe in general. But the biggest threat of all, that area where you saw there was most giraffe that were living, oil mining. So this photo was taken earlier last year, and at the moment everything has been removed out, but in 2 years' time, I put my touch wood, or not as the case may be, they will start to large-scale oil mining right in the middle of where the giraffe live. It's a development decision of the government. You can't stop it. You can protest all you like, but it's going to happen. So Total mining company, they are behind this, a French company. So we decided, well, we're not going to beat them, so let's see if we can collaborate with them. So we're trying to see if they can put some money where their mouth is and help us figure out how to save giraffe in this park. So it's a big move. Many people are not happy with it, but the reality is we're not going to win without them. So we're looking at other areas. Can we translocate giraffe into new areas or former areas and help conserve populations there? So we're doing assessments on that at the moment. Can they help us figure out if there is a skin disease? Can we give an injection? Can we come up with something? And how about they fund it? Can we get them to fund all of the game rangers running around in the field to stop poachers coming in? And of course, education. So we're working with the Ugandan Wildlife Education Centre, which is a little zoo in Entebbe, which is not the capital, but close to the capital, Kampala in Uganda. And we've provided thousands of booklets and posters so that they can integrate into their education program at the zoo. And I'm not going to talk about Namibia. I normally do, but Nikki's going to touch on Namibia. But because probably I'll talk for too long, in all honesty. It's too easy. It's an absolutely stunning part of the world. This looks a little bit like Colorado or something like that, but a bit greener. It's normally not this green. You can see giraffe have been around. It's been eating this bush, which is called a boskia. But they also chew on this bush, which is called Euphorbia damarana. If you and I eat it, within about 2 hours, we will be dead. It's got a milky latex inside of it, but giraffe, rhino, kudu, love it. So we're fortunate we're going to be building a research camp up there. After all of the years that I've spent living out of the back of a truck running up and down this area, we finally bit the bullet after going up there with Nikki, and there's a new flash luxury safari lodge up there. So we're not building it into that part. It's out the back, unfortunately. But so this is going to be a base for a PhD student and for long-term research that is critically needed. And we've started an environmental education program in Windhoek, in the capital of Namibia. So this is something that is close to my heart. I started in Namibia as the environmental education coordinator for the country many years ago. And this is going to be, based on the pilot work we're doing, the first and only environmental education program in the capital, which is quite frightening. In all these years, there's nothing remaining there. So this is exciting, and we'll be talking more with Blank Park Zoo, hopefully, as we move forward about this. So as I finish off, collaboration is key. Working in partnership is critical. The zoo community in general are bloody useless in talking amongst themselves. You might be good in talking to some zoos, but talking more generally about giraffe, and I'll stick to giraffe, what I know, is that there is cliques everywhere. And those cliques are not coming together and sharing, and you have so much information to share. It's just a shame it's just not out there. So we hope that we can help and work together. You guys have skills and capacity that we will never have. Imagine if you want to find out a whole bunch of things about research on your animals. Wouldn't it be good that we can maybe do the research in Africa? Or you come out and help us do the research in Africa. Seems a simple thing to do. So this is just the first part of that process, that we can come together and we can be involved in education, conservation, research, all of these initiatives together. So this is where the push starts. This is where we get your managers involved. We annoy them enough that hopefully they really think this is critical to be involved with. And 3 specific things. World Giraffe Day, as I said, brilliant. One of the things held this year by a few places was long necks for long necks. So a beer. Brilliant idea. Many places held events at zoos or at pubs. So we're going to expand it this year and have shots for spots. And I think, you know, we might not be able to do that on the zoo ground, as I was told, because hard liquor is supposedly not good for you. But if it's for a good cause, what the hell? Then there's Giraffe for Giraffe. Lots of feeding programs. You all go out, people come up and have one of the most amazing experiences by feeding a giraffe. The personal connection is amazing. How about we take that one step further? How about we truly say, by you feeding that giraffe, you can save a giraffe in Africa? How about a small percentage of that feed does actually go to saving a giraffe in the wild? Let's not just talk about it, let's actually act. And that's what I hope that the zoo community come together. People keep asking, what can I do at home to help save giraffe? You can come to a zoo, you can get information, you can feed a giraffe, and you can save them at the same time. I think that's fairly powerful messaging. And then the last one is GPS, giraffe positioning systems. So you've all got GPSs in your cars. A lot of people go out, you know, have them walking around in the bush. These guys who work out there have hardly any resources. So one of the drives we're looking at is, if you've got an old GPS you're not doing anything with, if it's in your box and you've just moved house again and it's still in your box, how about we can get through the zoo, we can donate them through the zoo, and then in Africa we can donate them to the different wildlife authorities that we work with. It'll support elephant research, giraffe, poaching, wildlife monitoring, more than just one species. So this is something that we're just throwing out there, and hopefully we move forward. And why? Because when my little guys, when they grow up and when their kids grow up, hopefully there's still giraffe to see in Africa. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you. I really don't know how to follow up on that. Again, thank you for coming. So most of you do know where I come from and a little bit of my history, but some of you don't. So I've been here at Blank Park Zoo for about 1.5 years. I work with the large mammals, particularly the giraffe. They're my favorite. I am extremely biased and I'm truthful about it. Before that, I was at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo in Colorado Springs for about 1 year. And it was in Colorado that I fell in love with giraffe. When, before I was a student, I visited the largest herd in captivity at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo and just fell in love with them. And then during my schooling, in my mammals husbandry class, we were asked to choose a mammal for our big research project. So I'm like, why not giraffe? They're pretty, they're tall, you know. And that's when I learned about the Giraffe Conservation Foundation. It was the same year that they were founded. It was in 2009. And I just kind of stalked them just a little bit through the years, just following them, because that's also when I found out about the subspecies, when I found out they were endangered, and that there was actually besides the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, there was very little being done. So it was really inspiring to read about that there are people out there trying to make a difference. And so I just kind of followed them. And through the years, I was lucky enough to work with the giraffe at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. They had about 22 when I worked there, so they had a few. And then when I moved here, I was born and raised in Iowa. When I moved back home, I actually got to meet him. And that was a pretty big deal last year when he came to the ZAC conference and got to speak as the keynote, one of the keynotes. The poor guy, I stalked him all week long. He never got rid of me. If you saw Julian, I was there with him. And by far, at the time, best week of my life. You know, just getting to meet somebody that you've looked up to for so long. And I just thought I was going to shake his hand and he might remember my name someday. But, you know, to actually get to sit down and share our ideas, and he asked us, you know, he asked me, what do you want to do? You know, Blank Park Zoo, without Blank Park Zoo, I never would have been here. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So to have their support and to have that relationship with the GCF and the Blank Park Zoo, I told him that was the week I fell in love with conservation. You know, that's the week that I realized that, hey, I like to talk, but I really like to talk about this. So we just kept in contact, you know, the months following after ZAC conference. That was in July. I got to be a part of kind of the development of World Giraffe Day, so that was also really cool. Blank Park Zoo, I think we raised a little over $2,000 just that week, so that was amazing. And then that's when I realized, okay, I know what I want to do at Blank Park Zoo. We need a bigger message, we need better signage, we need this, but if I'm going to sit here and I'm going to talk to you guys, and I need to get there. You know, I need to see this firsthand. A lot of people say you don't understand what's going on over there, and you just can't really fully appreciate what's going on until you see it firsthand and you see these animals in the wild. So I told them, I want to come to Africa. I want to go. I want to get my feet on the ground. Blank Park Zoo is a wonderful facility. They support their keepers. They have a travel and training program. We put together a proposal really late in the game. I was not very hopeful. And then I got the phone call one day and I learned that I was actually going to go to Africa. I opened my first bottle of champagne that day, and it was terrifying because I didn't realize that the cork actually does pop out of the bottle. It was amazing, but up until the day I got on the plane, it still hadn't sunk in that I was going to Africa, that Blank Park Zoo had put their trust behind me, that the Uganda Conservation Foundation, the GCF, that everybody believed in me. You know, here I am, a crazy girl with a dream, and I'm getting on a plane going to Namibia. So the basic overall reaction of everybody, why Namibia? Like, of all places in Africa, why are you going to Namibia? And I put these maps up there because I don't expect you guys to know where Namibia is. I didn't know where it was. You know, people ask me all the time, where's it at? So Julian actually chose Namibia for me. He knows that while I love the research and we couldn't do what we do without the research, I'm a talker. I love to teach. I want to do conservation education and focus on giraffe. And that's a big part of what he's doing in Namibia, you know, right outside of Windhoek. And in Windhoek, they're starting to incorporate these education programs. So he chose this for me, and here in Namibia, they had the Angolan giraffe, and they were just getting ready to start that, continue their country profile there. And he started this 11 years ago when GCF was just a little baby, you know, back in the day. But it's being a part of the country profile, it's the big picture. If we can get these animals, every single one of them, identified as an individual species, that's going to skyrocket their protection. So why not would I want to be a part of that? It's in the heart of GCF. I mean, that's where it is. That's where their office is. You know, this is Julian's home. I get to be with him. I get to experience this with him. And just about with any giraffe, there's very little known about it. And the experiences that I can bring back from the wild and working with, you know, the giraffe and the GCF back to Blank Park Zoo, and to continue to grow that relationship between Blank Park Zoo and the GCF. I mean, there's no words that you can put on that. So we were just a little tripod, the three of us out there, Julian, myself, and then Todd Mackey. He's a keeper up in the Como Zoo in St. Paul. And Todd was actually with Julian 11 years ago when he spent a year over there. So they actually started this project, and it's more just, you know, they were identifying individuals and taking pictures of them, and they were doing a lot of stuff. So it was really cool to have him there as well, because they have a previous relationship. He knows the area, and it was just, and he carried my stuff. So it was really nice to have him with us. So, you know, what was the purpose of the trip besides to have the time of my life? With the country profiles, like he said, we need to get a current status. How many giraffe are in Namibia? Where are they located? Namibia is actually a difficult country to kind of get a count on, because if we actually go back to the map, a good portion of Namibia is all commercialized. You've got game parks, safaris, you know, all of these ranches and reserves, so there's fences everywhere. So a good portion of this country, giraffe can't move naturally. They're in these areas. So where we were at, actually I think that might be my next slide. Where we were at, so here's Windhoek, and this is the whole Northwest. So while we drove there and while we drove back, it wasn't lost. And by we, I mean me, I'm trying to write down these German names being said by an Australian accent. It was horrific. It was horrible. It was just, but I mean, we collected over almost 200 commercial properties that Julian now gets the pleasure of contacting all of them. Do you have giraffe on your property? How many giraffe? How many females? How many males? Because we can't just walk in there and take these numbers. So that, lucky you get to deal with that. So I don't know, you guys might not see this in the back, and I won't really get too much into it, but we left Windhoek. Our first night we stayed in Twyfelfontein, and then we stayed there one night, and then we went up into kind of this area up Sesfontein, stayed in the Obius Plains, spent a couple nights on the Skeleton Coast, and then a couple nights in Puras, and then came home. We spent 7 days in total. And it was amazing, and I just can't believe that I can still pronounce some of these. And this is probably one of my favorites, and I just like to say it as Okokweyu. I don't know. I just like the fancy names. So you could probably, I mean, he touched on the 9 different subspecies. The Angolan bull is here on the left, and this is our bull, Jacoby, here at the zoo. And you can see the big difference between the Angolan and the reticulated. So they do look really different from one another. 120 giraffe. That's more than I've ever seen in my life. So this is a picture of me with my first giraffe. It's one of those experiences that if you ask me when I'm 90 years old, I'll probably still remember this moment. And thank God I had goofballs like myself, Julian and Todd, to tell me, hey, do something silly. I'm like, oh, how did I forget to do that? Because, you know, I'm really not a serious person. But the pictures that I came away with are just amazing. And to see these animals in this environment, I mean, they don't have enrichment. They're not getting fed, you know, they're not eating grain. They survive on this land, no fences. Right here, we had just left the commercial land. We're into communal land. These are wild giraffe. There's no fences, there's no nothing. So it was just amazing. Okay, so we saw 120 giraffes. So then what did we do with those giraffe? Took lots and lots of pictures. I came home with about 2,700 pictures. And I learned the hard way, because we take a picture of every single individual and we try to get a right and a left of every single individual. So, and you can't just, I mean, we don't have the time to tell them to, you know, train them to turn. You know, it's like, okay, other side, okay, that they don't listen. So you have to wait for them to move. And if you have a group of 15 giraffe, and that's a right and that's a left and a left and a right, and then there was a group of 12 giraffe. I think I came away with 160 pictures because, of course, I'm a tourist as well. So I'm taking all these different pictures. I learned the hard way. And Julian, he's shaking his head because he's like, you idiot. I have to go through those 160 pictures and try to find a right and a left to every individual. And you're like, dude, why didn't you tell me? Stop taking so many darn pictures. You'd figure it out sooner or later. I don't attempt his accent because I just can't do it. So very time consuming, and I promise I've started it. But it'll get there. So anyways, so when we look at the individuals, we got the right and the left, so what happens next? It's kind of like an ink blot. Okay, what do you see? You look for a spot. You look for an identifying mark. Their spots are just like our fingerprints. No two patterns are alike. So we look at this animal and we try to find something that stands out. I'm not going to see the same thing that Chad sees or Julian sees or anybody sees. We're all going to see different things. But to me, for some odd reason, my eyes are drawn to that. If I see that giraffe in 3 years, I'm still going to see those spots. They don't change. They might shift a little, but they're not going to change. So we're going to put it, it's going to go in a database. It's going to go in with its identifying marks. We're going to sex it, male, female. It's really easy to tell them apart. There's clearly anatomical differences. And age, are they juveniles? Are they subadults? Are they adults? And what was really cool is we also got to shoot them. And I actually was lucky enough that Julian let me keep a dart. And if you want to see this, I'll pass it around afterwards because there is actually a very sharp barb in there and I don't want anybody cutting them. And this is a dart that I shot and there is still DNA on it. So it's super gross and awesome. But yeah, so randomly selected, we shot 19 different individuals. Are they harmed? No. Do they like it? No. And it's a 3-person job, ideally. You have one person shooting, one person taking pictures, and one person with binoculars. So, I mean, we could be a good 50, 60 yards away from this giraffe. Somebody's got the giraffe and the binoculars, and you don't move. You follow the dart. Because you would think that this dart would stand out in the sand, and it doesn't. And sometimes you said, what, you've had one ricochet 50 meters off of a giraffe? So they can move. So you shoot the giraffe, you get the skin plug, there he is, cheesy smile. It's one of our first ones that we did. Close up, itty bitty teeny tiny skin plug. So hits the giraffe, takes the plug, the barb pulls it out, drops on the floor. Ideally, sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't fall out, and then you have to follow the giraffe around until it falls out, which can take a long time. So you try to help them walk through a bush because then the sticks and the twigs will make them fall off. Aw, of course I had to try my hand at this. That kind of got cut off. I got to shoot at 5 giraffe, and I didn't miss, so I was 5 for 5. They missed many times, but and you would think, I mean, that's a giraffe. That's pretty hard to miss. Well, you're aiming just for the hip, because that way if it does stick, they can reach around, they can knock it off, they can hit it with their tail. But so you're not, I mean, yeah, you're going to hit the giraffe, but you want to hit the hip. And Julian would probably be sad if I didn't tell the story of how I got this dart. In the 15 years that he's been darting giraffe, I was the first one to make one bleed. This wasn't the giraffe. I do have a picture of him later, but the wind took it. I didn't miss my aim. It wasn't my fault, but I hit him right in the underbelly where it was really thin, and I could see without the binoculars. There was a big red spot. I'm like, Julian, what is that? I'm like, is he bleeding? I don't bleed. This was covered in blood. I felt horrible. He's fine. I talked to him last week. He's not, like, there's no hard feelings. But yes, so I've heard the worst stories about darting and missing, so I'll take it. Anyways, it was amazing. The only way I'll shoot a giraffe, it's just a modified 22 with blanks, and it was probably one of those, like the first one, I was just shaking. I'm like, oh my God. Not shot many guns, but I have shot them, and it was amazing. And then that's me with my little pride and joy. That was my first plug. What's really cool is that night we got back to camp, and we were just kind of farting around with Julian and Todd's old files from 11 years ago. And we were looking at, of course, so this is 11 years ago, so any giraffe that they saw 11 years ago are going to be adults. So we're looking through all the adult files, or the juvenile files from back then, and we're looking, and the giraffe that I shot, they took pictures of 11 years ago. And they dubbed him Crisscross, because again, I was telling you, they look for a defining mark. So there's these 4 spots here that make a perfect cross. So again, we're going through file after file after file. I'm like, dude, we're not going to find any. This was 11 years ago. It's like a needle in a haystack. You look here, spot, 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 cross. You can't just go by that. So, okay, let's try and find another one. Okay, well, what about these 3 spots and that little one? Boom. That was really cool to see that and to know that I got this first DNA, because they didn't do DNA samples on these giraffe 11 years ago. So I got to get DNA on this guy. And Lord only knows, you know, he's obviously at least 11 years old, how many calves he sired. So that was a pretty cool experience. And of course, I took a lot of pictures of giraffes. So I just threw some up here to go through so you can kind of see how many different landscapes in the desert we saw, whether it be the riverbed or the sand dunes or the foothills. But just to get an idea that this isn't a wet environment. This is the desert. This is dry, rough, harsh, amazing. And that was our youngest calf that we came across. I would easily under a week old little girl. Her mom was off in a bush by herself away from the herd, and we couldn't figure out why she was such a loner. And then we realized she was hiding her baby. So that was pretty cool to see. But of course, we did more than just shoot pictures and shoot darts at giraffe. A big thing about the giraffe conservation and in Namibia is the education aspect of it and talking to people and the awareness. We came across a lot of conservancies, a lot of lodges, and he was talking about the posters. I've got some printed up here. I've got the conservation booklet up here that you guys can look at afterwards. Handed these out because these guys deal with locals every day. They deal with tourists every day. And these guys were even surprised when Julian started spewing his information that there are 9 different types of giraffe, that they were endangered. What? And they live in Africa and they have no idea what's going on with these animals. So to educate the people that educate others, I mean, you can just see how quickly that's going to spider and that's going to web, and you're just going to reach so much more when you can get these kind of relationships. And we would find people in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, oh, Julian, hey! And it's like, really? He knows everybody. It's just the craziest thing. And I'm like, that's probably how my sister feels when I move. We're like, I know everybody here, but it's in a town, and he knows people across the whole country of Namibia. It was just bizarre. Didn't go alone. Couldn't have done it without Blank Park Zoo. This is our big banner from World Giraffe Day. It's probably the biggest hit of World Giraffe Day. Guests just thought this was the coolest thing that they got to sign this banner, knowing that I was going to take it to the GCF and hand it to him myself. And they can display it in the Indaba. They can do with it as they please. But I think there's easily close to over probably 300 to 400 signatures on that banner. And it was just it was just incredible to see how well perceived that banner was. And I'm pretty sure that will happen every year because that was pretty cool. So you're going to have a really big collection of banners in the next couple of years. The spots, I mean, that right there, we sold spots. Kids could decorate them, guests could decorate them. Took them over to Namibia. That picture was really hard to set up because it was windy and the sand was shifting and Julian's trying to take pictures and they're falling over, and it was just, but I got it. And that one little fundraiser raised about $125. So, and everything that we did last year or this past June, you know, we can evaluate, was it successful, was it not? There were nights upon nights, you know, sitting around the fire talking to Julian and Todd, you know, what can we do for next year? There were more than just giraffe, lots of elephants. And I just died when I saw this crossing sign. I'm like, really, elephant crossing? And then the next day, our first elephant walked across the road. I'm like, oh, that's fitting. So I had to pair those up for you guys to see. And this was just a silly old bull walking around, throwing his tusk everywhere. This is the new subspecies of elephant. They're tiny. They're like dwarf elephant. They're just itty bitty. They're just amazing. Himsbach oryx, just stunning, and God, they're gorgeous. Just beautiful, that contrast of the black and white. Springbok. We had to saw over 1,000 springbok everywhere. You can't throw a rock and not hit 20 of them, and they're just the most skittish little guys. Ostrich, lots and lots of ostrich, and they were cute, and the babies were cute. They were everywhere. Guineas, you can't go to Africa and not have your guinea fowl. And you think, like, why is she taking a picture of cows? Our one cat, the whole time we saw on the trip. Beautiful, magnificent, really wanted one of their calves, failed miserably, and I'm pretty sure he's just hiding back there like, oh God, I hope nobody saw it, I hope nobody saw it. So that was our one cat. And one rhino. And this was probably one of the coolest animal sightings on the whole trip. Seen in an area that at first when I looked, I don't even know how I saw this rhino. Oops, sorry. Because if you follow my finger, he caught my eye. He was just moving, he caught my eye. I looked at it for about 10 seconds to make sure I wasn't crazy because I tended, I was in Africa for a few days. I might have been losing it. And then finally, I'm like, stop the car. Julian's like, why? There's a rhino. There's no rhino here. There's no rhino in this area. Stops the car. I won't repeat what he says because I might offend many of you in the room. But there was a rhino, and I forgot to put in the picture of us. But anyways, we might have gotten close, not dangerously close to this rhino, but it was so cool because even, telling the locals, telling them, where we saw this rhino, they're like, wow, we haven't seen rhino there in a very long time. So in these, southern black rhinos? Well, they're black rhino. I don't know what subspecies. Anyway, so black rhino, just like we have here at Blank Park Zoo. Just incredible to see that animal. We had a little bit of fun. I mean, you gotta have a little bit. And the crazy thing is their juice boxes look like our beers. It's really weird, but it's all work, no play, all work. This was our first night near Fontaine, sunset. Probably one of the most just like looking around, like, oh my God, I'm actually here. Like, that's what we do. Next morning, we went to Fontaine rock engravings. It was really neat to see all the engravings, lots and lots of giraffe. It was just really incredible. Again, while we were there, we were talking giraffe conservation. We were handed out, we handed out booklets. So I'm sure we were talking about something really deep and profound in this picture. This was when we came across our first mom and calf. Because you have to take a selfie when you're in Africa, so why not put an elephant in the background? Again, like a dwarf giraffe, just amazing, amazing little creatures holding the palm of your hand. This took a lot. I'm an Iowa girl, but my whole family, my sister graduated from Iowa State. They're all Iowa State fans, so I took one for the team, and I had to. The rash is healed, but we're all good. And we didn't just, I'm sure it died of natural causes. But we came across a carcass in a riverbed, and I don't really know why we did it, but we decided that we were gonna put it back together in the riverbed. So what I wouldn't have given to be a fly on the tree when the next tour guide comes across and be like, I don't know, it was just one of those things that we didn't really think about until we did it and be like, oh, we're gonna leave this and this is gonna be awesome. So we were just one vertebrae short and a couple hooves. And sorry, I have to dog on you a little bit, Julian. There's a giraffe out in the middle of nowhere, no trees to shoot around. He missed like 3 times. Kept missing it, so he got really frustrated, ditched the vehicle, and went after him on foot. And you did end up plugging him. Yes, he won. So the giraffe tried to best him, but he didn't get it. Again, with the dorky pictures, it was just amazing. This is near a salt flat. It was just incredible. Again, with the juice boxes, I don't know, they look like beers. They're not, I promise. Sitting up, it was probably late afternoon, watching 4 elephants roll in to drink from the water, presidential water hole is what it was called, near Gunamub River, Waneb, one of those, I don't know. Elephant carcass, that is I believe the femur. It was heavy, it was huge, and God, did it stink. A lot of people like to know, well, where did you sleep? What did you sleep? And I'm like, I slept in a tent. I was actually quite shocked that I did as well as I did. And these crazy fools even talked me into sleeping outside of my tent one night in the middle of nowhere. We are not in a campsite. We are not in a fenced-in area. There was nothing stopping an elephant from walking over me besides the fact that there weren't elephants in the area. Predators weren't in the area either, and he touched on it. Oh my God. We got a shower on our 3rd night there. It was amazing. We got beds to sleep in. This was at the Wilderness Safari, and I'm pretty sure we're probably gonna go over an hour, and if I lose some staff, that's fine, but there's just a story that I have to tell about this. We got invited to dinner both nights we were there, and they've got a community campsite, and there was just about 5 of us all together. We're sitting around the campfire. It's 9 o'clock at night. It's dark, and they've got a water hole there as well that draw in elephants and giraffe and different animals. And we're sitting there. We're drinking the juice boxes, and we're talking to people, and this guy comes up saying something in Afrikaans, so clearly it goes over my head. And then someone's like, well, did you guys see it? And we're like, did we see what? They're like, the bull elephant that just walked behind you guys like 30 feet. No, we missed that. Failed to see the giant elephant walk right behind us. But it's sand, their feet are very quiet, and he literally just walked 30 feet right behind us through the research camp and up through the hills. Wow, that was kind of scary. Oh, that was probably the best part about it, was the toilet and the shower. Oh, it was wonderful. It's the little things you take for granted. It really is. So where do we go from here? Oh my God, the ideas that we got there in the field for World Giraffe Day, for growing Blank Park Zoo, taking them to the next level. I mean, they're still coming. Just at breakfast this morning, we had new ideas pop into our head. But, incorporating my trip, because World Giraffe Day this year, we were talking about my trip. We were doing, the banner and all these spots to go to Africa. And then next World Giraffe Day, could it be based on my trip? Can people go around the zoo and travel around Namibia? Just different ways of incorporating the trip into that. Fundraising ideas, his long necks for long necks, shots for spots. I came up with, he said, I tried to do the shots for spots at Zubru, but again, feeding our patrons hard alcohol, like hard liquor around our animals isn't a good idea at all. So the idea popped into my head this last week while I was hosing a giraffe stall. Pictures, shots for spots. People call pictures and photographs shots and, all this stuff. So why not do like a selfie contest, do a picture contest, or drawing pictures, anything like that. And then collaborations in the education field. He was saying, in Namibia, they're doing this environmental education awareness program and such. What can we do here at Blank Park Zoo with our teachers, with our conservationists, with our education staff? What can we do here to help them in Namibia? Can we develop curriculum? Can we partner with them? Can we fund them? Because I love this new approach that the GCF is doing, realizing you can't just tell someone to save the giraffe. You have to build the appreciation for the environment, because it's an ecosystem. It's all important, whether it be a plant, the euphorbias that that they like to munch on, or the giraffe or the elephants. You have to save the entire ecosystem to save one giraffe. You're not just going, if you're just going after the giraffe, it's never going to win. So you just have to, and starting with the generations that are younger, with the kids, to inspire them. And then they go home, they're like, Mom, Dad, we have to save the giraffe, and then the mom and the dad, and it's just the whole approach. And I just think that's brilliant of the GCF to do that. And I love to talk, clearly. I want to start speaking more. I want to maybe, do an Iowa tour, go around to Iowa State or to Drake, to the Science Center, to libraries, and talk about this and get people involved. The Science Center, get classes involved. We had, an activity book or a coloring book, something like that, go into a college and, talking to the graphic design students and having people, get everybody involved, because I like to think about, this whole conservation thing is like the ecosystem. We all have to work together to make a difference. If the researchers alone can't do it, zoos alone, but if we support them and they support, it's just, it has to work as one to be truly effective. So looking back, everyone's like, what was your favorite part? You can't, it's like asking a mom, well, who's your favorite kid? Although we all know I was probably the favorite. Love you. So anyways, you can't put a good, like, okay, this is my favorite. I was in Africa. I was with the GCF. I was in college 3 years ago. I don't even know how I got to where I am right now, but to have the support of Blank Park Zoo and of the Uganda Conservation Foundation, and to have friends and family that support me and cheer me on, I am still in disbelief that I am standing here speaking to you guys today about something that I could only have dreamt about 3 years ago. And I want to thank everybody that has supported me, that has gotten me here. And there's so much about my trip that I was unable to cover because I wanted both of us to have time and I wanted everybody to be here. So hopefully someday you all will hear all of my stories. But thank you again for coming today and for supporting us. Julian, was nice enough to, he brought some hats and some buffs from Namibia for the GCF that are for sale up here. Please come up, check our posters out, check out the booklet. We'll go ahead and take questions now, whether it be for Julian or I. Go ahead and shoot them our way. So with that, thank you very much for everything. I'm so glad you asked that question, actually. No, and I was really mad. But that brings up a funny story. When we were staying in the Puras campsite, this was actually a campsite. So we had, well, I say we have toilets and showers, but it was literally in a tree. You know, our toilet and the shower was in a tree. So Julian had actually gone to bed earlier that night, and Todd and I had stayed up, and we were just chatting around the fire. I heard this weird noise about an hour before that sounded like a really loud animal. Like, nah, that was nothing. And then all of a sudden, we're just sitting there talking, and I mean, we're in a campsite, so it's quiet, and I just hear this roar, and I can't imitate it. It sounded like Deuce, and I'm like, oh my God, I just look at Todd, and my guy's eyes got huge, and I go, that's a lion. Like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So Julian had just turned his head torch off, so I knew he was still at least conscious, and I go, Julian, did you hear that? And he goes, go to your tent and go to bed. And this was just following stories about them waking up and finding cat prints around their tent. And I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God. And so I go in my tent and I hurry up and I get bundled up and I zip up. Because I mean, it was their winter, so it was like 40 degrees at night. And I'm writing in my journal. I'm like, oh my God, I just heard a lion. I heard a lion. We're all going to die. And then I realized I hadn't gone to the bathroom for 6 hours, but there was no way in hell that I was getting out of my tent. So I wake up the next morning and we were stumbling out of camp. We weren't stumbling. We got out of camp, and he asked one of the locals, hey, have you guys heard any lions in the area, you know, last night or this morning? I go, no. And he's like, oh, these fools thought they heard something. And they go, well, there was evidence, or there's rumors coming in that there was a bullfight, an elephant fight. I go, those were not elephants. That was a lion. I've worked with elephants before in Colorado. I know what an elephant sounds. I don't know what an elephant. I mean, I know what, you know, the normal elephant sounds like. And then come to find out it was a bullfight. We actually came across the bull that was injured during the fight. So it wasn't a lion. I didn't see a lion. I really wanted to at least hear a lion, but no lion. No. Any more questions? Anybody? There's a lot of you. Surely got something. Yes. Subspecies in a captive environment can breed, but that puts different pressures on, I mean, captive pressures are different than anything you'll find in the wild. But it seems as though if subspecies, you know, these subspecies, whether they be that or not, if they do cross paths, they don't tend to breed, do they?
No, so giraffe in the wild live ecologically and geographically separate. So whilst they, you know, do come in contact in some areas, there is overlap. Hybridization is extremely rare. So there's something more happening there than just a giraffe is a giraffe. So yeah, in a captive environment, there has been a lot of inbreeding over the years, and it works. But the whole theory, what we thought about what is a species, you know, if it breeds with something and has a viable offspring, then it's a species. But that's folklore taxonomy. You see cats breeding together and producing viable offspring, you know, so it's not, we're learning more every day, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you guys for coming.